Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm joined with Toxic and geeR. Welcome, gents.
Hello, thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Today we're going to talk about Medic and in specific Doom Medic and what kind of builds you should be using. So we'll start off with attributes, exotics, and power-ups. Toxic, do you want to tell us what you run in your build as far as that goes?
It's not very conventional, but I use a Stamina Agicon from Meme, but it works. But the usual is Con Agiluck is what I'll more than likely run. I'm actually wanting to try and stuff.
And for exotics?
I run heal potency, heal action cost reduction, and crit hit reduction.
Yeah, for the exotics, I think that's pretty much the standard with heal action cost, critical hit reduction, healing potency. Healing potency being the most important. I would say it's the only one that really matters even. But for the attributes, I think it's kind of inconsequential what you run, but like Toxic alluded to, the Con Agi Luck is definitely the standard.
I've seen some medics say that they prefer strength in one of his slots. I tried it for a while, but I don't know. It was not my cup of tea. I think Con Agi Luck is the best defensive suit in the game, personally.
Definitely.
I think so too.
As far as power-ups go, in Battlefields in particular, I think there's pretty much one route to go, unless you're doing a meme damage build, and that is full healing potency. Would you guys agree with that?
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're really shorting yourself and your team if you're not running full healing potency power-ups.
I don't think there's a time you should never be running full healing potency, like even outside of Battlefields.
Same goes for the food. Another point I was going to make regarding the attributes was I have tried running more offense-oriented attributes, so Constitution, Precision, and Luck, and the difference is it's seemingly negligible, but you will get some big spike damage on Vital Strike in particular at times, which can help with the assist in a battlefield.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that there are some medics who do like to go full meme on that, those exotics and stack in Vital Strike damage, and it is actually kind of impressive what some of them can do with that extra bit of damage on the assist.
The only one that's irreplaceable for the exotics, like I said, would be healing potency, but yeah, you could sub in the other two using Vital Strike damage and rifle damage.
So we can briefly talk about the two main jewelry sets, which are Doom and FR. Strikers is not a viable set. So FR, really the only thing that can be nice in certain situations that it gives you is Swift Bomb, I would say. Swift Ampule is, it's not, the basic cooldown of Ampule is so short that you're really not going to notice much of a difference with that Swift Ampule. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Especially with the spike damage that's going out in an organized battlefield, yeah. It can be helpful, like if you get a chain of several, but yeah, for the most part, it's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah. Swift Res as well, if I remember correctly, but
yeah, and I would say Swift Res, it can help at some point, but more or less, I would say that it facilitates your group getting farmed because you can keep on getting people up over and over again until they lose their buffs, and to what end. So that's not a positive aspect of the jewelry set at all, I would say.
It just provides more pressure than FR can handle, even with the Swift heals.
You're also just going to end up overlapping reses with whoever you're partnered with, because for the most part, you're going to have 2 medics per side.
And the Stasis cooldown reduction, that's just kind of allowing medics to play poorly, and Stasis in itself is not always that useful. I would say maybe half the time it's that useful whenever you use it in a battlefield, because you can get dunked on as soon as you're out of it, so it's nothing to rely on to stay alive as a medic.
Definitely.
Yeah, a lot of the time your team will just leave you behind because you're so immobilized by it. One thing that jumps to mind for me pertaining to first response as a set is that it's a decent way to go about an introductory role, like if it's your first time playing
For sure.
Medic in a Battlefield, I would recommend that the Medic uses that. Because Doom isn't going to be providing them that benefit.
And there is a lot to learn. You don't want to just settle for FR, I would say. There are cases you can make to where FR might be more beneficial. Doom is much more viable in PvP in general, so that should be like 99% of the time what you're using.
Absolutely. And
For sure.
especially in Battlefields, the Medic should be in the back, so their survivability shouldn't be an issue where they have to run FR and, say, a build with evasion in it, for example. It shouldn't make any difference. They should be the last to die. It would be ideal if that were the meta, to have one first response and one Doom Medic, but that's not the case, unfortunately. And I don't see that changing anytime in the near future either.
Not unless Doom gets nerfed in some way and FR gets buffed.
As a Doom medic, you have access to a lot of debuffs in your expertise. So the Doom proc can apply all of those debuffs simultaneously to your target. And I'll let geeR here explain more in depth how that works.
All of them with the exception of Serotonin Purge, which currently strips buffs in a particular order off of your opponent. The way it functions currently is, I believe it's at a 15% chance when using each debuff ability to proc all of your debuff abilities, with, like I said, the exception of Serotonin Purge. And additionally, it also includes Neurotoxin, which is just a ranged damage ability that applies a poison dot. So you have the potential to peek out of line of sight and throw just one ability, but obviously you want to throw as many as you can get off.
For sure.
And then proc Doom. And the most important component of that proc would, in my opinion, be the heal debuff. Back to Corruption. It cuts healing by 40%, and it really puts pressure on the opposing medics.
Definitely a powerful set. I would say it's second or third most powerful set in the game, personally.
Definitely.
Probably second, next to GA.
Sure, yeah. GA is pretty broken.
Okay, so with that out of the way, I think we can move right along to expertise. So with expertise, as a Doom medic, there's almost only one way to do this.
Yeah.
It is like the most standardized way to play the game out of any of the professions, I would say, like in terms of the skills you have to get. But you
Very
do
cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to completely ignore the first page, because the meat of Medic and Doom is all on the second page. So we're going to move straight over to the Medic Specialization EOG page. And what I'm going to do here is, I'm just going to click every single box in this page and not stop clicking. Well, except for back to grenade, but we'll get into why later. But I'll just fill all of this out and we'll talk about it one by one.
It really is the most simplistic expertise you could have on any class in the game.
There's only one point you can change, and I think all of us put that in BM. You could yeah, just don't put in grenade, but you could put in like an agi on the first page, but
Yeah.
not very useful compared to the BM point.
So we'll go down the first column here, which starts with back to concentration. Increases your heal over time potency. Not the most powerful box in this expertise, but you'll want to get it to unlock other things. After this, you will have hasty resuscitation. So this decreases the cooldown time of all of your revive and area abilities, which is quite nice. After this, you have blood cleansers, clears in cap off your target. We'll talk about it in a bit. Now after this is one of your main heal, after this is one of your main heal abilities. It's called Back to Bomb.
I would say it's one of the two primary heals that should be communicated in voice. It puts Back to Jab on cooldown, which is a self-heal, but it's your largest single target heal and can be used on yourself as well as others.
It also has the longest cooldown, so you'll definitely want to choose your target wisely whenever you're using it.
True, I believe it's half a minute for the cooldown.
Pretty sure, yeah.
The action cost is significant as well.
And if you were
Mostly
to use back to jab instead, like on yourself, I believe it puts bomb on a 10-second cooldown.
That's right, yeah.
So the second column here, this is going to be pretty speedy expertise review because we're just kind of, since there is nothing really to choose from here, aside from one point we're going to talk about here shortly, we're just filling out all these boxes, and then we'll go into detail on what all of these abilities do. So the second column here, back to potency, it's a straight heal potency increase, so just dump all points into that. Cure affliction removes damage over time abilities.
That's a huge one, Cure Affliction. That should essentially be used on cooldown, which is very short. It clears up to 5 stacks of damage over time abilities.
Back to efficiency, action cost reduction for your healing abilities, and as Toxic just said, serotonin boost. So this it clears off the other type of affliction, which is debuffs.
And it shares. Oh, sorry, it doesn't share, but it has the same cooldown as Cure Affliction. A common mistake that medics make, actually, is using those two in conjunction, Cure Affliction and Serotonin Boost.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. But...
Yeah, I am as well. There are times where you should use one and not the other.
So you spam them both.
Yeah, when you have so much going on, it's like, I'm just going to throw it. I have the action.
Yeah, because you have generally 2 general officers with you feeding an action. But that boost would be primarily useful for removing heal debuffs off of people. Okay, so back to Grenade. As it is now on this server, it shares a cooldown with both Ampule and Back to Spray, which essentially makes it completely useless. Like, it's not worth using at all. If it were to put one or the other on cooldown, maybe it would be worth picking up, but as it stands currently, it's a complete waste of your investment.
So we have the center column here. First 2 just grant you additional access to buffs, which if you're not a Striker's Medic, you're probably not going to be using it unless one of your group members has no buffs. And after that, you get Reckless Simulation. When you use this ability, it will drain health from yourself, and it will grant you action. But very nice ability to have. So after this box, you get access to Stasis Other, which I would say is the most powerful ability in the game. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, very versatile.
Used in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I think I have talked about it in every single one of my videos so far, so...
It has a lot of interactions with different classes. I can see why.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say that comes close to this ability in terms of raw power is SFP, but even this is stronger in terms of what you can do with it.
So many different ways compared to SFP.
Sure.
Yeah, you could even shut down an SFP with it.
All right, so we're going to move on to the 2 debuff lines. So the first debuff you can get is Back to Corruption. And I believe it's 40% nerf on your heal. Is that correct?
Yeah, 40%.
Yes.
Okay. So it's quite strong, and it's very noticeable whenever someone gets hit by this and they're trying to heal off the damage.
It's one of the most potent debuffs in the entire game, given its cooldown and range and usability.
Absolutely.
I believe it's the most spammable heal cut in the game, which is really big, especially with Doom.
It's really strong with the Doom proc. You can just proc it without even having the ability ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because not only does Doom proc that, but it procs other debuffs which prevent the opposing medics from clearing that said debuff. It's a real pain for them.
The second ability on this column is Serotonin Purge.
Yeah, it doesn't have too many uses in Battlefield since the GA Inspiration proc is the second thing to be purged after Mustafar Injector, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that,
Strength buff is also high up there. It might be before that or right after.
Yeah, but it won't get any significant buffs in Battlefields, and you're just wasting time and action by pressing it and using it in Battlefields.
Yeah, good point.
But we mostly pick up that box to pick up Rheumatic Calamity.
You lose health, or the person that has it applied to them loses health when they use action.
When you apply Rheumatic Calamity, it does damage immediately, as well as applying a bleed damage over time,
Yeah, that's
and a debuff that consumes your opponent's health based on the amount of action they're using.
And by itself, I believe this is the longest cooldown medic debuff.
Yeah, it's 45 seconds.
So with that column out of the way, we'll talk about the very last column here. First Doom ability on this column is Electrolyte Drain. This is a snare that medic has access to. You're not going to see a lot of potent uses of this in battlefields unless someone doesn't have a run-up, but it's great in PvP in general, I would say.
Its main function and usefulness comes from the fact that it has a very short cooldown and a low action cost, so it can be spammed to attempt to get a Doom proc as much as possible.
The second debuff on this column is Traumatize. It can proc along with the other Doom procs, and it saps action from your opponent. I believe it's one of the stronger action sappers in the game.
the strongest, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say strongest, but I wasn't sure.
It's also worth noting that it has a recourse and can't be spammed by either yourself or another medic or bounty hunter who also has an action sap.
Yeah, so if you use it on someone with that recourse, the ability just won't fire off you. It won't be consumed, which is nice.
Exactly, yeah, just for balance's sake.
If you proc Doom with Traumatize, it like traumatizes them twice, if that makes sense. Because
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
it was the Doom Traumatize and the Traumatize ability you just used. So it's taking 6k action, I believe, if you're using the highest one.
That's pretty
And you
insane.
proc Doom with it.
Sounds balanced to me.
So the very last point on this page, is Thyroid Rupture. I'll defer to geeR to talk about that.
The Thyroid Rupture has a fairly low action cost and a very quick cooldown, so it can essentially be spammed, which is very helpful because it has a 25% damage reduction and cannot miss. So it's a guaranteed way to land a damage reduction on an opponent. Ideally someone who's a damage dealer.
Personally, try and throw those on Mandos and Battlefields, since they're the main damage dealers. Or
Yeah.
Smuggler as well.
Yep, Smuggler or an officer using superior firepower. Even though they can clear it, it's still worth using because it has such a short cooldown, as well as the capability of, like I said before, proccing Doom.
Yep.
So before we finish off on this page, I wanted to wrap around and talk about the Affliction boxes. So it does affect your Nerve Gas ability. It's one of your main damaging abilities. So with these points invested into these boxes, it can increase the overall damage that you'll get out of that Nerve Gas substantially.
I would say that's the main meat of your damage as a medic. Actually, it certainly is. That's where almost all of your damage comes from as a medic.
Yeah.
Since it's an AoE, it does damage in an area as well as applying a damage over time in said area. And it lasts a long time if you invest into these points.
All right, so with all of those points invested, you have 1 point remaining. You can do pretty much 3 things with this point. You can put it into Grenade, which I would not recommend. You can go back to the first page and put it into something like footwork, yeah, and get a point into Agility, or you can put the last point into Beastmaster. So putting a point into BM is actually kind of viable for medic and BFs. It's not something I personally do.
Yes. So with the 60-point pet and the 1 point in BM, you get, I think it's about 3.4% to dodge, parry, evasion, strike through, and maybe crit, but I might be wrong
Yep.
with that.
Crit and strike through.
But with all those defensives, it's definitely... But it also lowers your damage by 25%, which isn't as big of a deal on medic because you're not trying to burst someone down like a bounty hunter would or a commander
Sure.
or something. So it's pretty good to try and keep yourself alive with the defensives.
That damage reduction does not apply to the Doom dots or the Rheumatic Calamity damage.
It's worth noting you only need that 1 point into BM to get these bonuses, so that's a perfectly viable playstyle if you wanted to do that. It may even be a lot more beneficial for newer medics, I would say, if you're just getting used to the class, and that damage reduction bonus can come in handy in certain situations.
It's also worth noting that you can pull it out in combat, but you can't store it in combat. So if you get yourself in a tight pinch, say for example you use Stasis Self, and you get caught in a bad spot, you can call that pet out and boost your defenses up. It can help you survive.
It's also worth noting that those 3.4% stats aren't going to save you if you're just completely out of position.
Yeah, yeah. If you
Absolutely.
make a few bad plays, and it may help you survive a couple of them, but don't rely on it. Don't rely on any of it.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that pretty much covers expertise. We'll just go into detail on the individual abilities that you have access to on Medic. The first one we're going to talk about is Serotonin Boost. I'll let you lead on this, geeR.
The Serotonin Boost, as I was getting to earlier, it's really your priority to clear heal debuffs or heal cuts off of people. Examples would be, for Medic specifically, Back to Corruption, from Bounty Hunters, Dreadstrike, and then from Spies, Ambush/Snipe. Those are very prominent debuffs which will get you killed 100% if they're not cleared off of you in a battlefield.
You should be using that ability off cooldown.
Yeah, it has a very short cooldown and it should be used constantly.
And it's something that if you're especially if you're double medicing, you can't just rely on maybe the more experienced medic to be doing this. You need to be contributing with this ability as much as possible, because if someone has these debuffs on them constantly, they're going to be prone to getting dired and just melted, and that's just another death that you have to deal with. So this is one of the most important tasks as a medic, is to be clearing these heal debuffs off, and any debuffs in general, because they all have harmful effects on them, I guess I would say.
Also really useful for clearing the Lucky Break debuff on smugglers.
Oh yeah,
that's
that's a great point. Great point.
Yeah, so Lucky Break, Smuggler has these this ability called Lucky Break, which can boost their damage on single targets, and it has recourse on it. But the thing about this recourse is it can be boosted off by a medic. So if you see the Lucky Break and Feeling Lucky recourses on the Smuggler, and I'll put those on the screen for this video, be looking out for them and be boosting them off so that Smuggler can resume his damaging attacks as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I believe you covered that in your Smuggler video as well.
Mm-hmm.
Clearing those can give a huge boost to your team as far as DPS goes.
So I believe we can move on to Cure Affliction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Cure Affliction removes a 5-stack from your target?
Yes.
Okay.
Even multiple 5-stacks.
Yeah. So it's not like if you have 5, like each element stacked up to 5, it'll remove all of those.
Oh wow! I guess I didn't realize that. That's not a situation I find myself in very often. So
hopefully not. So if you have, say, like a Nerve Gas, which would essentially be a 1-stack, and then a Spy's Fang 3-stack and a Commando 5-stack on you, it'll clear all of them in one usage of that ability.
So yeah, this is definitely, I would say, a good check for Commando and Spy. There's no reason not to be using this along with Serotonin Boost.
Another ability that should be used off cooldown.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so short. Just use it. If you don't have action, yell at your officer or reckless stem. It's really that simple. Ampule, this will be, I would call this your primary heal as medic, just because of how much you spam it. It's very short cooldown.
I'm trying to recall the base heal. I believe it's 3,500, but I might be wrong. With the standard 82% healing potency boost, which would be going all in with expertise, power-ups, food, and your entertainer buff of 15%, it should be just over 4,000 healing, and it's very spammable with a very low cooldown.
Sustain type healing ability. Just keep people up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's like it's pretty much like most professions heal in terms of values.
Exactly. And another common mistake or criticism would be that people use it on an incapacitated target, getting them instantly killed after, like, an in-cap resulting in a death blow. But there are times where that can be used pretty well. If they're behind line of sight, or if you have a backup heal right about to come back to fully heal them up so they're not instantly in-capped again.
So Infusion, this is your heal over time ability. It doesn't really heal a lot on a single target, but the main thing about Infusion is it's an AoE ability, so it's going to be hitting all of your group members as long as they're in range whenever you hit it.
I also believe it adds up to being over a 7,000 heal.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it is fairly significant. Okay. That's why a lot of people pick up that top left box back to concentration, because it's an AoE and because it adds up to a large heal over time. It really helps your healing, and people look at that on an export and think that it's significant, but it might not necessarily be, because it's not dealing with spike damage. It's just padding what looks like you're doing well.
If you have a group member that's in-capped, you will want to refrain from using Infusion or Ampule on that target unless they are behind a wall, because once you do Ampule them, you just pretty much handed a kill to the opposition. They're not gonna have any health, and they're just gonna get assisted down. So when you're in-capped, you're in an invulnerable state. So it's best to try to heal them whenever your large heals are available off cooldown.
That's a good point, yeah. For those who don't know, if you're incapacitated, you can't be attacked by abilities from range, but your opponent could come up within something like 3 meters and click on you and finish the incapacitation and death blow you. However, if they're backed up at range, which is typically the case in battlefields, they can't finish you off. They have to wait the 10 seconds of the incapacitation duration.
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll Ampule someone and instant blood cleanser them, so it gets rid of the in-cap, but they can hopefully get to a better position to where I can Ampule them again and they'll be behind cover or something.
Sure, yeah, that's
100%.
Or bomb.
As long as they're not like brain dead, they just don't
as long
stand
as
there.
or if they're not healed, like I won't do it on someone that's healed cut already in-cap, because
very good point.
Just dead already.
Like you said, stall for bomb or stall for spray, that kind of thing.
Or I'll Ampule them and then I'll instant stasis out of them if it's like, if we're farming the enemy team and I just want to keep my teammate alive.
Yeah, especially if you love that teammate.
Yeah, but that's very rare to have that happens.
So I think we can move on to spray now. Now spray innately, I believe the range on it is 25 meters and a radius around you.
That's right.
So as long as your group members are not running around trees, running around LOS, and they're in proper line of sight of you, they will get hit by this spray. And this is another thing you're going to want to call as a medic, your spray abilities, because especially if you are double medicing with someone, because sprays can overlap, and that can be a really bad thing when that happens.
Yeah, it can be extremely detrimental to your team. I would say even as a solo medic, it's worth calling, just to alert your teammates to get within range and to be within line of sight of you. But like you said, if you're dual medicing and you overlap sprays, that could be very easily a lost fight.
Especially in solo medicing, because then your teammates will also know that you don't have spray available, so you guys might need to retreat and fall back.
And I'm not saying call spray like as you're spraying. When it's coming off a cooldown, you need to say spray a second before you spray, or I'm about to spray if it's going to be like 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's a great point actually, because I've medicked with multiple people where I'll say, okay, I'm about to spray coming out, and then they'll throw it, and I'm like, okay, I'll hold it.
And they'll say spray afterward, like, okay,
yeah,
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks
completely
for the
useless call. Like they're just wasting air with that.
Definitely not guilty of that.
No, same. Another point for spray is that I would say it's the most important heal in the game. It gives you the most benefit for your team. It is the biggest heal. It's the biggest single heal in the entire game.
For sure.
And it has to be communicated. and it has to be used almost on cooldown.
Yeah, it can be really disastrous if used improperly.
It's a big game changer. Yeah, you're right.
Can go from your team almost wiping to being back to full and wiping the enemy team.
Your timing of it is so key as a medic. Like that should be the main thing you're focusing on.
I think timing with medic is just the biggest thing. Timing is medic's thing.
Yeah, true.
We can move on to the last big heal ability, which is your back to bomb. A lot of medics tend to just panic through this on people when they're at half health or on themselves when they're taking any kind of heat at all. As long as you're not like sweating your heart out in a BF and like just you must use it like right now, I would try to ampule someone up first before using bomb if possible, and use bomb as a last resort, because you save these bombs, it's really gonna help you out in the long run. Not having to res people constantly and then trying to get them back up to full health, or having to use your blood cleansers as often.
It's kind of like a last resort heal. I would even say that medics should almost never use it on themselves, unless they're kind of in that in-between situation where they're kind of caught out of position, but they think they can make it away, like post self-stasis.
Yeah, and speaking on that, if you are in stasis self, don't bomb yourself. Get it back to kit. Get it back to kit. Activate it in your stasis. Or and by the time you're out of stasis, you should be able to you should have had at least one spray off. So, I mean, you're gonna be at full health regardless. Yeah, so don't waste your bomb on yourself if you're in stasis.
Yeah. Another point for back to bomb is it really has to be communicated and clearly, because if you're medicing with someone else and you overlap your bombs, that's a long cooldown and it's a strong one, and it's a huge waste if you do that.
Something else I would advise as far as communication goes, especially if your team is getting a lot of pressure, when you have both of these heals on cooldown, I like to say to my team, I have no big heals, so that they know I have neither bomb or spray, so that they're more aware that they should be careful in using LOS more.
If you have an experienced team, they'll respond to that very well. You just tell them I'm low on heals and they'll fall right back and get into cover.
Actually, I would say that's one of the most important things to communicate, not just a side communicate. You need to be...
No, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
But I think that pretty much covers heals. I think we can move on to reses. So, I mean, reses is short for resurrection. I'm sure at this point you know what the ability does, so I'm not going to explain what it does, but...
Hope so.
Yeah, oh my God.
Bringing people back from the dead.
If you're watching this Battlefield video, yeah, I hope you know. But
I hope so.
You have two main primary reses you're going to be using in Battlefields. One is the PvP Resuscitate player, and the other is Revive player. Revive player has much longer cooldown. You just keep it on your toolbar because it's a secondary res. It's going to come in handy sometimes. But PvP res is going to be your main res to use.
I believe PvP Resuscitate player is 15 seconds, and that'll be your primary res, which you'll use more than any other by far.
So there is one more res that we need to talk about, and that is PvP Area Revive. Now this is a res that you're not going to use nearly as often, but it's more of like a tactical medic utility that can completely reset a fight when used properly.
This would be an ability that you use once per battlefield, as it has a 15-minute cooldown, and battlefields, as you know, are 15 minutes long. This ability needs to be used really carefully, as well as communicated carefully, because, again, like I said with others, you don't want to overlap it with your other medic. But even so, if you were, say, to be a solo medic, you need to communicate it with your team so they don't clone and go back to spawn. You need to tell them, okay, my AoE res is coming out, I'm separate from the opposition, we're going to gather here, I'm going to AoE res you, and then I'm going to give you an AoE heal, aka back to spray, and then we're going to reset this fight and re-engage.
Yeah, so a lot of times what will happen is a medic will get away after their team died, or half the group gets separated on one side of like a base, and you can't reach them. So you try to book it up to the roof and get within
Yeah.
drag range and get the rest of your team dragged up to roof, and then you hit that area revive and you can get everyone back up and completely reset the way. It can be a game changer.
And more often than not, it is on the roof too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's always used on the roof.
Yeah.
Unless you're already fighting on the roof and you go down, but
I don't think I've
very-
ever used it in something like Masasi, because usually or even Data Runner, because usually those fights end because someone gets dired and then their team gets like way too far away and there's no like wrapping around structures to recover.
True, yeah. Yeah, there's no using it there.
Another good use for it is like if half your team's still alive and you're still fighting, you can like use it mid fight and get people up.
Oh yeah, of course.
If there's like 2 or 3 people alive and you feel like it'll make a difference, there are times where it's useful there, yeah.
Still sort of resetting the fight in a way, but
Yeah.
a few different uses.
Now, drag, I wanted to first talk about what it does is whenever your teammates are a corpse, you can drag them to your feet and res them. I don't know what the range of a res is.
40.
46 meters.
So drag has a range of 40 meters. This is a number value you need to get into your head pretty much, because if you're trying to drag and it's not working and you don't know why, it's probably because you're out of range. So you can't always get into range to drag, but what you need to be doing is dragging preemptively for starters, if possible, because sometimes people get delay killed, whether coming out of a stasis or whatever, and you just are not in range. So you have to wrap around and reset.
You should be spamming if people start dying, so you can have them buy you and res them as soon as possible.
Yeah, drag will work on multiple targets. So as many people in your group that are dead,
Oh yeah.
so up to 7, it'll drag them all simultaneously.
You don't need to target the corpse either to drag them. It'll just drag whoever's in your group.
It's true, yeah,
Third
good
range.
point. It's free target, yeah.
And it's worth noting that drag does not work inside of the battlefield structures. So that is like the #1 reason people don't fight inside of those bases, aside from like cancerous LOS designs of those things.
It actually does work as long as they die within the same room as you.
Okay, so I think it's because the rooms are like cell based and it's like
Yeah.
seeing itself as its own little world there.
That's right, yeah.
But don't sleep on drag. Use it.
Yeah,
Just
100%.
get used to using it.
It has a shorter range than the revive itself, well, the single target revive, but it's still worth using because it's not for you. You're not dragging for your sake. You're dragging for your teammates' sake. You're dragging them so they're not in a dangerous location when they do get revived.
Yep. Blood cleansers, like I mentioned earlier, its sole purpose is to clear an end cap off of one of your group members, and it can only be used while the group member is not end capped. So you can't use it while someone's laying on the ground and then ampule them and hope that they won't die. You have to use it afterward.
You have to ampule then blood cleanser.
Yeah, get them up on their feet and then clear their end cap so that way when they take another end cap, it's not an instant kill.
And hopefully they're behind cover or just in better LOS. rather than
Ideally.
Not in the enemy's LOS.
Or you have, say, a back-to bomb or a stasis other ready and you can keep them alive. You feel confident that you can keep them alive.
So another thing to know about blood cleansers is some of your group members can all have end cap sickness on them, and you may have to make a decision on who you want to use this on. So I would say if you have to choose between a commando and an officer, always choose an officer for your choice for clearing an end cap.
Yeah, very
In the
true.
long run, will keep your group alive more than the
Yeah.
commando.
It also depends on their positioning because if your officer's well behind you and you know they'll be okay,
Yeah.
you can let them go and you know that you can trust them to play it safe. If the commando's up front, you want to give them the blood cleanser so they can survive. Blood cleanser has a 1-minute cooldown.
So maximum amount of time you could use it per BF would be 14.
Basically
Yeah.
14.
Yeah.
One thing I'll mention about blood cleanser, and I've noticed this really consistently, is that medics call their blood cleansers for some reason. It's not needed at all. You don't need to call blood cleanser because if you use it, your other medic, your partner, won't be able to.
It doesn't consume it,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, there's no need to call it at all. It's not like a res where you call it and it's like you're gonna overlap and it's gonna detriment in some way.
I think maybe I have called it. I don't always call it, but I think maybe the reason that I call it sometimes is to
Let the target know.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
let the person know.
True.
Sometimes you should call it.
Like, all right, you can be a careless idiot now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Pretty much.
We can talk about Reckless Stim now. Reckless Stim, like we talked about earlier, it's drains your health, gives you action. I would say it's one of the most important tools to have as a medic.
Yep.
Medic is consistently, it's one of, if not the most action-heavy classes in the game, even with taking all of your exotic mods into consideration for heal action reduction, and even having multiple officers in the group, you can still struggle for action, and that's where Reckless Stim comes in handy.
Even with heal action cost reduction mods in your exotics, as well as action cost reduction in your entertainer build, you can easily run out of action with 2 officers feeding you action the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Just
If
spamming
it-
so many things that consume action.
Yeah, medic has the most abilities in the game, which
Yeah.
it's definitely worth noting. So without that, you would be running dry out of action constantly. But with Reckless Stim, medic is potentially the most powerful class in the game.
Definitely.
I would say it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I personally use Mark IV just so it doesn't take too much health, but it still gives me enough action to recover if
yeah.
I'm out of action. But just a personal thing.
If you are consistently struggling with action in a BF, like you just see the too tired, like, you know, every 15 seconds, it's a good idea to not only use Reckless Stimulation, but use it preemptively. So you're building up your action with the idea that you are going to run out of action soon because your team is just struggling with action. It's a little tip I learned from Weezius.
That's such a good point. I would say around the halfway mark of running out of your green bar, you should start thinking about it.
Mhm.
The best tip that I could give people regarding that would be that the heal stim does not consume action.
Oh, yeah.
And to use it prior to or immediately following the usage of a back to spray. So it would be like Reckless Stim, Heal Stim, back to spray. And
Yeah.
your action will be good and you'll be providing good healing for your team simultaneously.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I consider like heal stim to, in many cases, be a free reckless stim for you if you are at full health.
Exactly, yeah.
That's another reason I use the lower mark, so it heals me from more than like if I was using. I think the top mark takes the same amount of health away as the stim heals you for.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess it doesn't matter too much. Just again, personal preference.
All right, so we can talk about Stasis self real quickly. This is generally the medic's old shit button. It's not a very great old shit button, I would say.
I'm out of it's for sure. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not very good.
Just buys you a bit of time so you can die 10 seconds later.
Yeah, it can't. You can get away with using it. You can live sometimes. I would say that more often than not, it's just going to delay the inevitable.
I like to try and use it when I'm already tired.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
I come out with
True.
dire recourse and can potentially get away.
True, yeah.
Another thing, like I mentioned earlier, keep back to kits on you. If you're in Stasis self, you can pop those back to kits and be full health pretty quickly.
If you haven't gone over this before, the back to kits will give you a heal over time as long as you stay still. Which,
Yeah,
with a
that's correct.
stasis,
Might as well.
you'll be able to stand still because you're not taking damage, so you can use it in
Yeah.
almost full heal, or at least half heal.
Not gonna be able to move very far with Stasis anyway, so
Yeah, I think it has like a 90% movement speed reduction.
You'd be better off just using the back to kit. And trying to
Yep.
like slowly crawl away, pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, Stasis Other, I've talked about this ability in every single one of my videos, and there's a good reason for it. It is one of the most game-changing abilities in the game, and there are several reasons why. Especially with the Doom set, since it increases the duration of Stasis Other.
Oh, true. It
Um,
increases it by 5 seconds.
mhm.
Doom increases the duration of every debuff by 5 seconds. And I don't know whether or not it was intended, but it applies to Stasis Other because it is technically a debuff. Although
Oh, I see.
it could be considered a buff as well because it could benefit you. It can keep you alive.
I'd say Stasis Others probably the highest skill gap for Medic in Battlefield.
I would say
I think so, yeah.
using
And
stasis.
reses.
Yeah, using Stasis Other is the highest skill ceiling ability out of all of the professions.
It takes a great amount of awareness of what's going on with not
Yes.
only your team but your opposition's team as well.
So Stasis Other, you're putting someone out of the fight for how many seconds long is it? For with Doom?
10 seconds by default, 15 seconds with Doom.
And that 15 seconds can mean quite a lot. Actually, I thought it was longer than that because it seems like forever when you are
It
in
feels
a
like
box.
an eternity, yeah.
But you can put this on pretty much anyone. You can put this on an officer with FSFP up. It can completely cancel out a volley. You can put it on commando with standfast up, so they can't just step all over your face.
Yeah. The crazy thing is you can use it on yourself, even though it says Stasis Other.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's SWG for you, though.
You can even Stasis a bounty hunter to avoid dire traps and then push on.
Yeah. So I was gonna say that's personally my favorite application of Stasis Other. I
Me
just
too.
love to piss off VHs
Yeah.
who think they're all
Cancel them.
smug with that dire recourse coming in. They're just gonna drop traps on you. You just stick them in the timeout cube. And
That's what it is. It's a timeout cube. They land the perfect dire traps and you just remove them.
Then you just kill their team while they're in the
Yep.
box and can't do anything.
Ideally,
very
that's
satisfying.
what you want to communicate to your team too. Is I've eliminated someone from this. So this was an 8v8. It's an 8v7 now.
Yeah.
And
It's
can't
like a
be
power
CC'd
play.
either. You can't be
Yeah,
CC'd
no crowd
or-
control, no damage. It's really powerful.
Yeah, your team always needs to take advantage of that moment whenever whoever you box is in stasis.
15 seconds does not sound like a lot, but it is very
Yeah,
game-changing.
you can make several plays in that amount of time.
Multiple, exactly. Good point.
Even like really mess up Stasis Other though. Like that's what, like sometimes an officer will look like they're about to SFP, so you like
Mhm.
preemptively box them, and then they
True.
don't use SFP, and then they have a free SFP at that point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. Because if you do happen to waste stasis, I believe the recourse is something like a minute or a minute and a half, even, where
Yeah.
it can't be applied to them again in that time. And in that same vein, you could use it offensively. You could stasis an enemy medic, and then they can't stasis themselves after.
Absolutely. That's like a meme thing, but I haven't seen it done in a
Yeah.
while. But
there are
that can
times for it.
absolutely be done. Yeah, you can preemptively stasis officers too. You can give them the recourse,
Very
and
true, yeah.
they can run in and have immunity. They can get 2
Or
volleys of.
Or a smuggler, but yeah, like you said, generally an officer.
I would say in almost every situation, it's not ideal. You generally want to save your box, but it's always an option. You can also stasis smugglers and spies. I mean, not quite as often used on them, but it's still a viable option, especially if like smuggler is double attacking and crit buffs, or if the spy is just walking all over your team. Okay, well, I think we can move on to your medic attacks. We have several of them here. First one we'll talk about, just to get out of the way, is your Vital Strike. Most of the time, this is an ability that's you're just going to hit, on assist targets. You might as well hit it along with like Neurotoxin because they're both 64-meter range.
Potentially, it will adjust to the range of the weapon that you're using. So
Yeah,
if you're using a rifle with 64-meter range, it
So
will.
we recommend using rifle as a do medic for this reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Or as any medic, really. But some medics, and this is kind of tangential, but outside of battlefields will use melee weapons for the additional parry, so they can parry melee attacks being thrown at them.
Mhm.
But yeah, for the most part, you want to use rifles, and Vital Strike will be your main source of spike damage. It has the biggest one-hit damage that you can apply as a medic.
Sure.
I think the most I've hit, or the highest Vital Strike I've hit, is like a 4K Vital Strike with those meme exos and suit we were talking about earlier.
And Vital Strike, it cannot proc Doom, but Neurotoxin can. So Neurotoxin is also a nice ability that you can use from ranged. So the thing about Neurotoxin is it's vital for proccing Doom, and
It has the same range as Battle Strike, and it's the longest range potential Doom proccing ability that you have. So you're going to be using it a lot.
right. I like to spam it off cooldown with my Vital Strike on assist targets, as long as I'm not like, in the midst of healing or whatever. Now, the first of your Doom abilities that we're going to talk about are Back to Corruption. We already pretty much explained what this does. Actually, we explained what all of these did, so we're not going to go into full detail about them, but I would say after Neurotoxin, as long as you're in range, Back to Corruption would be the first thing that I would spam on the target, just because that's like almost guaranteed BC on someone. Even if you don't proc Doom, at least you proc that.
It is the strongest, yeah.
Yeah.
It has the most influence on a team fight.
The person killed because they're just not getting the full heals.
And it's also a good idea to coordinate this ability. So if you see that a target already has Dread Strike on them, or they're dired, definitely be hitting that Back to Corruption on them, because that can be the difference between getting that kill and them getting away scot-free.
They stack Dread Strike for Bounty Hunter, Ambush/Snipe for Spy, and Back to Corruption for Medic, all stacked together. So those are huge heal cuts.
Yeah, I would say, I was go as far as to say is if you have all three of those and you are Dire Snared, you're just fucked. Just
You're done.
just accept. Just say
Just
your prayers.
Don't
I
touch
didn't-
the board, yeah, it's over.
I didn't think that the snipe debuff and Back to Corruption stacked. I think those are on the same debuff slot, if you will.
Oh, okay. But yeah, you could
But-
be right, man.
but- Back to Corruption and Dread Strike still stack, like you guys were saying.
I will retract my statement there and say that if you have Ice Cream, you may be able to survive that encounter. If you can just boost those right off, as long as you don't have a ton of other debuffs on you. So the other abilities, Thyroid Rupture, Electrolyte Drain, Rheumatic Calamity, and Traumatize, they all proc Doom. I would say you don't want to be going about just spamming all of these things on someone just trying to get a Doom proc. Mostly I would say just, hit 2 abilities, try to get a Doom proc, and go back to healing, rinse and repeat.
Unless you have the presence of mind to proc them and spam
Yeah,
them till
yeah,
you
for sure. If you're not under pressure, you can just keep going ham on it.
The one thing I wanted to mention was that out of all your debuffs, Rheumatic Calamity has the ability to do damage immediately upon using it. So out of all of them, it's the only one that can miss. You can roll a miss in your combat.
Oh, okay. And it's worth noting that you can get the equivalent of a Doom proc without actually getting a Doom proc if you land all of these debuffs on one target, which is kind of funny.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How SOE went about that?
But really, by the time you click that last ability, with
More than likely
the
proc Doom.
the way the rolls work, you're more than likely to have already had gotten a Doom proc off someone. So
There's also that chance for the Doom debuffs to be reset, or just your debuffs in general to be reset.
Yeah.
I think.
True, they have swift chances, so you could use it
Yeah.
and then it could be reset, so you have it available immediately to use again.
That's why you don't want to
insane.
completely just face roll your keyboard with Back to Corruption, for example, because you get like a swift Back to Corruption, would just use 2 in a row when yours hasn't been cleared.
You don't want to spam it mindlessly, you gotta be careful and pay attention.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another thing is Doom Recourse. I think we should probably talk about that.
True.
After your target gets doomed, they will have a recourse for a small period of time. I don't know the exact duration of it, but it's just worth noting that you can't just spam Doom on someone over and over again. There is a small window of time where they are going to be able to not get doomed by you. Okay, I think that wraps up all the abilities. I wanted to move on to another subject that I see especially a lot of new medics struggle with. I struggled with this myself whenever I was new to medic. I imagine most people did, just because of the nature of the beast and how you have to play it in comparison to the other combat classes, which is the problem of tunneling. As a medic, you can potentially find yourself in a situation where your positioning is just straight up awful because you're so focused on your group members' health bars and your heal abilities that you're not looking where you're at. You just completely put yourself in a bad position.
I'm also
Or
guilty of this.
yeah, I am as well. Or it could go the other way where you're focusing too much on the amount of debuffs you're applying.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then you could lose track of your positioning and your teammates' health.
Yeah.
Like, it takes more multitasking than any other class. And I say that with certainty.
Now, I would say a good way to overcome tunneling is to make it your focus to every few seconds look down at your character. You have to just kind of set a timer in your head just to say, okay, I need to look at my where my dude's at and make sure he's not like, you know, in another zip code here from my other team. Because that's also important when you're trying to use back to spray. Because if you're just like out somewhere else and away from your team and you hit spray, it's not gonna heal them.
You can't just throw it.
Yeah. So I would say a good way to probably get better at this is, like I said, just, you know, try to ingrain it in your brain and to do world PvP. I would say Restus is a good training zone in general for medic. You're not really as much under pressure as you are in BFs.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
The more you play in general, the better you'll get at it.
Yeah, and that's all it is to it. It's no one's gonna hop on the medic in day one and just be, you know, god at it. I don't care who you are. It's gonna take some practice.
Yeah, I mean, it has not only the most abilities, but the versatility of abilities. Like, you have to support your team while simultaneously attacking the other team if you want to play it in an ideal way.
Another thing I want to move on to is corpse bug. Every Battlefielder knows what this is.
Oh, God.
It's one of the most annoying bugs in the game. There's really no way of avoiding it. It's just the old game code, and
yeah,
so
it's an intrinsic part of the game. It can't be avoided.
SWG.
Yeah. So basically, what a corpse bug is, you try to res someone, and they get the res, they click yes, but hey, they're still a corpse, and they can move around, and they can't take.
Seconds.
Yeah. And I don't know how their health works in this state, but I'm pretty sure I've died before I've gotten up from the corpse bug.
Yep.
Your health is still there.
Yeah. So
Not showing.
It seems as though the opponents see you as being up and not in capped, but yourself and your allies see you as still being in cap or even dead.
I think
they
I
can't
recall.
support you. Like, you can't be supported, but you can be attacked. It's really, really bad.
We touched on it a lot before, but communication, we'll just go back to it again, just to kind of wrap up here. Medic's a very vocal class, just like BH, Smuggler. You're going to want to, I would say even more so, probably the most vocal class in the game, but
I agree.
You need to be calling your abilities, and you need to preemptively call your abilities, and you need to make your team aware of what you were planning on doing, or especially the other medic, because when you're healing with another medic, it's just so problematic if you are not vocal, because you're wasting heals left and right. It's kind of a mess. Yeah.
Reses and heals, yeah.
They don't know what to do just because they don't know what they can do. They don't know their heal situation.
Yep. I think if you have two medics on your team and they're not communicating, you might as well just not even play.
Yeah.
You're not going to win.
So play medic with a mic, especially if you're playing dual medic, and especially if you're doing Battlefield. If you're doing Battlefields at all, play with a mic, please. Another thing we didn't talk about is target binds. As a medic, you're going to want to target bind at least one person. I would say target binding multiple people is a good idea, but you want to target bind the person that you plan on being your primary target for Stasis other. So if it's an officer, just say, like at the beginning of the battlefield with the other medics, say which target you are going to focus on boxing, and then set your target bind to that person. So medic, it takes quite a while to get used to, but it's very rewarding class to play, very fun class to play. My personal opinion, if I could only play one class, it would be Medic. I just always have a blast playing it.
Me too. I would say the same
Same.
thing.
My main
My favorite
profession
class
at the
in the game. It's so dynamic. Like you can do damage, you can kill people, like you can fight one-on-one, you can essentially carry a team, a group. It has such a great impact. It's so versatile and dynamic.
I agree with that. Good medics will never be outdone by a bad medic. There's no like question about it. Medic is what defines a group almost.
Yeah.
Don't forget to tip your medic when you get out of the battlefield.
Yeah, send me money.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much covers the profession. Appreciate your pointers and all your expertise, guys. Thank you all for coming along.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.